At least that's what the picture is, as strange as that is. So health psychology, in the 17th, 16th and 17th century, well, actually it's in the 17th century, René Descartes was a French philosopher. He's the one that said, "I think, therefore I am." He's the one that came up with mind-body dualism. In other words, that the mind was connected to the body. It's really hard to get doctors to agree to that they can make people crazy. That's not the word I'm trying to use. They can make people, their physical problems can change the psychological aspect of a select individual. They can get sick, and of course it'll make them depressed, which is very logical. They get Parkinson's disease, and potentially their anxiety level goes up. Actually, about 20% of people with Parkinson's disease will have delusions and hallucinations, as exciting as that is. Parkinson's disease. They start seeing things, which is kind of fun. Yes. Okay. Look, it's like a pamphlet. That's
That
great.
was what you were giving me.
I want you to read that book. Take you all 15 minutes. So René Descartes, famous philosopher, one of my favorite philosophers, kind of a fun guy. He was also a mathematician. He considered the body a machine. And if you look at muscles and you look at tendons and how muscles work, it's very mechanical. So we can have created robots that are very lifelike. The Japanese and the Chinese are big on artificial intelligence and robots, and they have created robots that are very human-like. Descartes was able to describe the basic reflexes of the human body, and of course he did this in a mechanical manner. I talked about the human body as a machine. He believed that the problem with the body caused a problem in the mind, and this is a new idea. The Greeks had this idea, but the Romans had discarded it. So until the 17th century, we didn't have mind-body dualism. But then it went away. Descartes believed in it, and it was almost philosophical. The medical community just didn't adhere to that. They didn't care. They didn't care about the mind, and this was the fact until the 1970s, when body-mind dualism came back. And if you go to the doctor today, and he's an MD, then probably he will give you medication and not even talk about the effect on your mind or the effect on your feelings. Probably. But if you have a holistic doctor, a doctor who, a DO for example, doctor of osteopathy, a lot of times they're more holistic, and they will treat you with medicine, but they'll also talk about your mental capacity, your emotions, your reaction to the drug, your emotional reaction to the drug. If you go see an MD, they very rarely will talk about these things. I went to see my doctor over the holiday. I was just getting a checkup. I just wanted to make sure I didn't need a shot of some kind or another. And we were talking about, what were we talking about? Oh, I take a lot of supplements, and I just do it for fun. Because, I like to spend money. So I take things like ginkgo biloba to increase my circulation in my brain. I take L-carnitine. What else do I take? Ginseng. I take ginseng. I take, what else? DHEA is another thing. We're going to be talking about DHEA later. But I take all these as supplements. And the doctor said, well, do you think any of these really work? Do you think maybe you should discard some of these? And I said, oh, it doesn't really make any difference. It's whether it really works or whether it's a placebo effect, it really doesn't matter. Some of the medications you give me are the placebo effect. No. Everything I give you has been researched by pharmaceutical companies, and they all work. That kind of thing. I'm thinking, you jackass. Like, you know what the hell you're talking about. You're a doctor. You just keep throwing pills at people. That's all that's going on. Anyway, So this body-mind dualism is also known as the Cartesian dualism. Cartesian logic has to do with the fact that I think, therefore I am, the idea that I am human because I think. The Cartesian logic has to do with whether somebody is alive or dead. If somebody is in a vegetative state, are they still alive? Over the holiday, no, it was last week, a lady in a vegetative state gave birth to a baby. And people are trying to figure out, well, who's messing with that lady? Who impregnated her? Is she still alive? Well, of course she's still, well, maybe not. If she has a straight line, if she has a flat line, if she has flat line, is she still alive? Well, that's a question that everybody has to answer, I guess. When I worked in medicine, it was one of the questions that we came up with. Somebody has flatlined. They have no brain activity whatsoever. Are they still alive? I know this is a horrible, horrible thing to talk about, but one of the things that we did at the hospital that I worked at in Omaha, we harvested organs. But in order to harvest organs, the person has to be alive when you harvest them. They can't be dead. If they're dead, well, you don't have very long to harvest the organs. So what we would try to do, our job at our hospital, was to keep the patient alive until we could harvest their organs. I know that sounds horrible. It sounds medieval or something, that you're keeping this person alive so that you can harvest their organs. But the reality is, if we harvest their organs, then we can save the life of somebody who needed a heart. We can save the life of somebody who needed a kidney. We can save 2 people that needed kidneys. We can save 2 people that needed lungs. If they need, we can save a person because of their liver. And now they're chopping the liver into pieces, and so you can save 2 or 3 people with livers. With the liver. I know this sounds god awful, doesn't it? But that was our job. Our job was to maintain the body until we could harvest the organs. We did transplant at our hospital. They transplanted down the road at 2 hospitals. One of them was a Catholic hospital. The other was the state hospital. It was the University of Nebraska Medical Center. They transplanted, and so did Clarkson transplanted. So we would keep them alive until we could harvest their organs. I know. So when is somebody dead? Is the question that you have to ask. And with these individuals, they had decided that they were dead, that they would never be the same, and that they would let them go. I mean, that's what happens when you pull the plug. And that's the reason you have to pull the plug, because you can keep people going for a really long time. That's what happened with Terry Schiavo. They kept her alive for years, despite the fact she had a flat line. And of course, this is a question. If I cross the line there? Travis here, telling me when I cross lines. Okay. Anyway, that's has to do with Cartesian dualism, and our job was, of course, to keep these people alive. I didn't have anything to do with harvesting organs. All I did was make sure that they were still healthy. Which sounds odd. The person's dead, but they're healthy. Make sure that their circulation was good. Make sure that their blood chemistry was okay. Make sure that their liver was okay. I mean, if you're going to transplant a liver, you don't want to transplant a liver that is diseased, has hepatitis C or whatever. So that was my job, was to draw their blood and to make sure everything was okay. This is a picture of the very first microscope. I know, looks weird, doesn't it? Post-Renaissance rationality shifted from mysticism to the biological causes of diseases. We were trying to figure out what was going on. Now remember, this is the 17th century. We couldn't see anything smaller than what you could peer with your naked eye. Therefore, we didn't understand viruses. We didn't understand bacteria. We didn't understand fungus. And these were causing all kinds of horrible problems. I mean, Europe is rife with all of these viral infections. Remember, we had all these, we had smallpox, we had chickenpox, we had viral liver diseases, We had all of these horrible diseases that were killing other people off, but we were growing them in Europe because they lived with their pigs. They lived with their livestock. As strange as that may seem, would anybody live with a pig? Well, sometimes, this is what happens, and I think I talked about this last time. If you live in Asia, they fertilize their fields with human waste. And then they let the pigs get out into the human waste, and so they kind of transfer these viruses back and forth between humans and the pigs. So then when they harvest the pigs, or even if they're just around the pigs, they will catch the virus back. And that's where influenza comes from every year. And that's the reason it changes, because they fertilize their fields with human waste. So we get a new flu every year. That's one of the reasons why we can't just manufacture a flu shot and use it year after year after year. We have to come up with a new flu shot because it's always a different configuration. There's several different types of the flu. There's two major types, type A and type B. And the question is, how much of A is it and how much of B is it? So that's what we have to do every year. And sometimes we miss it by a lot. One year it was only, flu shots were only 17% effective. Last year it was 35%, I think. But they always tell you to get flu shots. Not a bad idea. The people that are the most susceptible to the flu are the very young and the very old. People my age. But I don't get a flu shot because I never get sick. The other reason is because the last time I got a flu shot, I did get sick from the flu shot. I never get the flu, but I got a shot, I got sick from the flu shot. I mean, it was like the next day I got sick. Deathly ill, it was horrible. It was way back when I was in the service. So I don't do it anymore. The anatomical theory of disease developed at about this time during the Renaissance. It was theorized that the origins of diseases were in the internal organs, the musculature, and the skeletal system of the body. Anton von Leeuwenhoek in the 18th century, probably the 17th century, developed the first microscope, and that's what it looked like, as odd as that may seem. And because of that, because of this instrument right here, we were able to see bacteria for the first time. So what we discovered was that a lot of our water was contaminated.
How do you say his name?
Leeuwenhoek? Is that all right? It's Dutch. He's Dutch. So the W sounds like a V. Discoveries of the 19th century included cellular theory of theory, a theory that diseases result from the abnormalities in body cells. They malfunction and then they die. And if you look at older individuals, a lot of times their cells will stop working. They just get old and their cells get worn out. They're not replaced and then they die. That's just the way it works. And that's dying of old age, dying of natural causes. We all have an expiration date. We all do. We're born with an expiration date. Humans don't live to be 180 years old. Nobody has lived that long. It's very rare to see somebody live to be 120. If we're nice to ourselves and we do really nice things for us and we stay healthy throughout our lives, we may live to an optimum number of years. The other thing has to do with genes. Your genes tell you how long you're going to live. So select populations don't live as long as other populations. Okay. Well, here's an interesting fact for you. We have done research looking at European Americans. We've done research looking at American Indians. And one of the things we've discovered is that if an American Indian lives to be 70 years old, then he's more likely, or she is more likely, to live into their 90s. But they have to make it to 70. And that's the trick. Some people don't really treat themselves very good. They drink alcohol, they eat the wrong foods, they develop diabetes. And diabetes, you can't live forever with diabetes. It just isn't going to happen. So if you develop, and I don't have a spleen. Now theoretically, I should die in my, I don't know, I probably should be dead already. My life expectancy when I was born was 56. Well, I'm 69 years old. My life expectancy now is in the 70s. But when I was born in 1949, the life expectancy was only 56. What happened between 1949 and 2019? I know what year it is. What has happened? What has changed in the United States? If my life expectancy was only 56 in 1949, what has changed? That's a lot of years. It's almost 80 now. If I were female, it would be 82. But I'm not female, I'm male. If I were Hispanic, it would be even higher, can it? So I'm trying to learn Spanish. I'm taking shots, so. I want to be a female, it's a Hispanic female. So then I live forever. What happened between 1949 and today that changed my life expectancy?
Increase in medicine. Advanced
Me-
medicine.
Better medicine. We didn't have the same medicine. The only medicine we had in 1949, the only antibiotic we had two. We had sulfa drugs and we had penicillin. So when I got the flu, when I got sick, when I got a cold when I was a kid, they gave me a shot of penicillin. Well, colds don't have anything to do with bacteria. Penicillin is an antibiotic. It kills bacteria. It doesn't have anything to do with viruses. But every time I got sick, they gave me a shot of penicillin. Isn't that the dumbest thing in the world? That's how smart doctors are, okay? Bastards. They're like a bunch of sheep. They all follow each other and they all do the same damn thing. And sometimes they make the same damn mistake. In the 1950s, they used to tell women, well, if you've got morning sickness, then you need to smoke cigarettes. It will take care of your morning sickness. And now, of course, there's a thing on the package that says, geez, dumb shit, don't smoke. You're going to hurt your baby. Isn't that what it says? I should something like that.
Close enough.
I haven't seen a package of cigarettes for a while. So I don't know. I can't remember what I was talking about. Okay, so why am I going to live longer, or theoretically? I shouldn't be alive today. I should have died a bunch of times. I should have died on the operating table when they took my spleen out. I died on the operating table. I died at one point when I was in the military. I stopped breathing, and something happened, and I started breathing. Actually, what happened, somebody picked me up and threw me. And when I landed, it shocked me. I started breathing again. But I had stopped breathing because I'd fallen from about 3 stories. It's not too high. This is 16. That's not so bad. Halfway down there. I landed on my shoulders and stopped breathing. So what's the difference? What's happened? In 1949, over half the people in the United States smoked. So the life expectancy was being decreased with lung cancer and emphysema. Actually, most people didn't make it to emphysema. They died of lung cancer. And I used to read the obituaries. I'm kind of strange. I mean, I've always read the obituaries. And the reason I read them was to find out if people died younger than I was planning on dying, or younger than my parents. There were people dying of lung cancer in their 40s and in their 50s, and this was relatively common. And these guys were chain smokers. I mean, in the old days, if you only smoked 2 packs a day, you weren't serious about it. Chain smokers smoked 3 and 4 packs a day, and this was common. Eisenhower during World War II was a chain smoker, and he smoked 5 packs of cigarettes a day. That's 100 cigarettes. But you could do that if you just smoked one right after the other. And these were unfiltered cigarettes. They didn't have filters back, I know. They didn't have filters back then. So that's one of the things that changed. My dad's generation, people in World War II, they gave us cigarettes during Vietnam. Did they give you guys cigarettes? No. That was in our, it was in our C rations. Yeah. We got 5 cigarettes. And I didn't smoke, so I'm kind of smart. I didn't smoke. So I'd trade them off for the candy bar or the gum or something, whatever. Yeah, so I ate too much sugar, but I don't care. At least I wasn't smoking those cigarettes. The other thing was a lot of people drank, and when they drank some fairly heavy alcohol. They weren't drinking beer, they were drinking whiskey and vodka, tequila. They didn't drink tequila. They were drinking rum. So they were drinking some really heavy stuff. So everything has changed. Now we eat better. A healthy breakfast when I was a kid was either oatmeal or bacon and eggs. Well, bacon and eggs, yeah, lots of cholesterol. Eggs aren't bad for you, but the bacon was.
Well, the middle part, the yolk.
I'm sorry?
Having too much yolk is.
They're not. Now they're saying that the whole egg is good for you because of the protein, and you need cholesterol to some
Well,
extent.
for people who have, are prone to heart attacks, older people can't eat the yolk. Well, they can, if they have 2 eggs, they have to have just the one yolk, and then the other one has
That's
to.
silly.
Yeah.
Germans used to say that women can eat all the eggs that they want because they have periods, but men can only have 1 egg a week. That's what they used to say. Yeah, the Germans are weird, but they're weird anyway. Yeah, so a lot of things have changed, as odd as that may seem. The bacon that we used to eat, we used to raise pigs for bacon, and the reason that we raised them, or the reason that they were bacon, that we were going to use them to create bacon, was because they had so much fat on them. Bacon you hardly ever saw anything red in bacon. It was just grease. I mean, it was just fat. You were lucky if you got a little piece of red. Now it's almost all red. I mean, it's the things that they raise for bacon now, little tiny skinny things, you know. But it's very lean. In the old days, you can barely get enough grease to fry your egg in if you fry bacon. But in the old days, geez, you had a whole puddle of grease. Ugh. Doesn't that sound horrible? So if you ate bacon and eggs in the old days, you ate a lot of grease. There was a lot of pig fat that you ate. And then you ate the eggs, of course. And they got it mixed up. They thought that the eggs were the bad thing. But it's not. It's the animal fat that's the bad thing. And we used to get a lot of animal fat. People used to cook with bacon grease. They would collect their bacon grease. And that's all they fried anything in. They fried their potatoes. They fried their green beans, as strange as that may seem. They fried almost everything. Or they used lard, which is rendered pig fat. I know, it sounds weird. They used to make all the tortillas were made with lard. So if you went to a Mexican restaurant, you came out of there with your tongue stuck to the roof of your mouth because you ate all that lard. It was they mixed it in their hamburger. They mixed it in their, it was in their tortillas. It was in their guacamole. They put lard in it. They don't do it anymore, of course. But in the old days, and this is one of the reasons why it killed so many people. This is one of the reasons why in the old days, my life expectancy would have been much shorter because of all of the things that we were doing. Well, everything changes. Eggs are good for you now because you need the protein. Really? Okay. Yeah, and this is all nutrition stuff. And it all changes from week to week, unfortunately. This is good for you and this is bad for you. For a while there, you were supposed to eat avocados. Now you're not supposed to eat avocados. For a while, cherries cured arthritis, and now they're not exactly sure if that's true. You know, everything changes. They keep discovering new things. But the other problem is, well, of course, the other problem is you can't just talk about bacon. It's just like you can't talk about marijuana. You can't talk about marijuana because marijuana has different levels of THC in it. And of course now the THC is so much higher than it was back in the 60s and 70s. So the guys that were smoking pot in the 60s and 70s, they thought they were getting high. Well, they ought to try smoking now. Man, they're going to just be flying around the room. Because the THC is so much higher than it was. And it's the same way with bacon. Bacon used to be almost all fat. So if you ate a piece of bacon, You were eating raw pig fat. Anyway, and now it's a lot leaner than it used to be. Anyway. Okay, so we discovered bacteria in the 19th century, strangely enough. We discovered that it existed, and we discovered that it was causing problems. And as the microscopes got better and better and better, of course, we started demonstrating what types of bacteria we were talking about, and which ones were pathogenic and which ones weren't. So as the microscopes became more and more sophisticated, our ability to identify these bacteria, these pathogens, grew. For the longest time, we didn't know where the bubonic plague came from. Actually, we didn't discover this until the 1950s. Well, I was working in the lab in the 1970s, and we were still talking about the bubonic plague. I was stationed in, where was it? Lubbock, Texas. I was at Reese Air Force Base in Lubbock, Texas. And they had a bubonic plague epidemic on the Jicarilla reservation in New Mexico. It's up in the middle of New Mexico. It turned out to be, it was the plague, but it didn't affect any humans, but it was killing off rodents. And because they were finding dead rats, because they were finding dead rats, they knew that they had the bubonic plague. Well, the bubonic plague is in rodents. It's in the fleas. So we had to go over from Lubbock. We had to go over and we had to pick up some of the rats and put them in bags. And that was on the Jicarilla reservation. People were really nice over there. But of course, we were talking about the bubonic plague. The plague is here. It's right here, right now. It's one of the reasons why you don't have as many prairie dogs as you used to have. It's in the rodent population. It kills them off. We had the same problem up in Montana. It's killing off all the prairie dogs. Not that anybody cared. Pretty dead prairie dogs. No, not the prairie dogs. They're my favorite. But they were having problems with Richardson's ground squirrels and prairie dogs. It's killing off the squirrel populations in the back east, farther east, and up in the northeast. So there's not nearly as many squirrels as there used to be because of the bubonic plague. Now the problem is, of course, it can be spread to humans because of the fleas. Oh, that's a cute squirrel. Somebody picks up that squirrel. I'll bring it back to life if I pet it enough. And then, of course, it gets into the human population. The only way we had to discover if it was bubonic plague was to grow it on the footpads of mice, as funny as that is. I know, that's the way we had to do it. Then they came up with a medium that we could use. 1846, William Morton discovered that ether could be used as an anesthetic. This revolutionized the process of surgery, which could now be done with a patient pain-free and completely relaxed. In the old days, how did you do a surgery on somebody with a messed up something or other? You held them down. I know, as stupid as that sounds. 1895, William Röntgen, a German physicist, discovered X-rays that were eventually used to observe internal organs, not to mention the disposition of the skeletal system. This is the first X-ray. This is a picture of the first X-ray. This is an X-ray of his wife's hand. As you can see, she's got a wedding ring on. So we know that they were married. Not important. First X-ray. 20th century, the dawn of the new era. The biomedical model was developed. The idea that illness always has a physical cause. This became dominant view of the 20th century medicine. Of course, that's one of the reasons why they started throwing pills at everybody, because there's always a physical reason. So we always treat you for your problem. The reality is, if you've got a cold, the best thing to do is leave it alone. If you've got a cold, the best thing to do is not blow your nose. I know, you spread it throughout the rest of your nasal passage. Yeah. If you've got a cold, it probably only affects about 1% of your mucous membranes in your nasal passages. But because you blow your nose, you're irritating the rest of your nasal passages. If you have allergies, your allergies, what was I thinking? Wait a minute. I lost my thought, I'm sorry. Right, the more you stimulate it, the worse the allergies get. So the more you react to it, the more reaction you get.
Oh, let me scratch it.
I know, and it's hard. It's hard when your nose, you feel like you need to blow your nose, and you start blowing your nose, and just keep blowing your nose, keep blowing your nose. It's hard not to do that, but that's what you need to do in order to keep it from spreading to the rest of your system. A lot of times, the reaction that you have, the mucus that comes out of your nose, is just a overreaction to a very simple problem. And sometimes, if you leave it alone, you can go to sleep at night and wake up the next morning and it's gone. Your immune system is taking care of it, so just a thought. And some people, they get a cold and it just lasts forever. They treat it with NyQuil and then Dayquil and then NyQuil and then Dayquil, and all they're doing is overstimulating themselves. The Air Force, when I was in the service, they had this nasal spray for people with stopped up sinuses. It's called Afrin, and it was developed by the Air Force. So they give it to pilots so that they could fly. You know, if you've got a stopped up sinuses and you go up and start pulling G's, then your head explodes. You know, it's very painful. And sometimes it can knock you out. So they didn't want that to happen. They wouldn't let anybody fly with a cold. They wouldn't let them fly if they had nasal congestion. So they developed this Afrin, but Afrin only works for about 2 days. After that, it overstimulates your mucous membrane, and then it causes you to have a stopped up nose. So you have to be careful. I know, it's magic stuff. This stuff really works. If you ever get a cold and your nose was really stopped up, buy some Afrin and squirt it up there. Don't use it for more than a couple days, but that stuff will clear you out in a nanosecond. It's really good stuff. But it was developed for the pilots, so we could send them up and get them shot. That's what I always tell myself every time we sent those bastards up. Well, maybe it won't come back. Arrogant person. The biomedical model embraces reductionism, complex phenomena derived ultimately from a single primary factor. The biomedical model is based on the Cartesian doctrine of mind-body dualism. Health is viewed as simply the absence of disease with the biomedical model. But of course we know that that's not true, that health has 3 aspects to it. One of them is a social aspect, one of them is a psychological aspect, and the other is a physical aspect. But the biomedical model only looks at one aspect, the physical aspect. Doesn't look at the psychological, has nothing to do with the social aspect of health. Pathogen is a virus, bacterium, or some other microorganism that causes a particular disease. I can't remember. These are viruses and this is bacteria, or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. Anyway, these are pathogens. There are lots of other pathogens. If you've ever been in a house with mold in it, potentially it caused you to have a reaction. That reaction was probably had something to do with your sinuses, got into your sinuses, and you had a reaction to it. You can get mold, you can get fungal pneumonia is a possibility. If you have a yeast infection, then potentially yeast is a fungus, and of course it's not a bacteria or a virus, but it's causing problems. Our immune systems are amazing. Our immune systems are wonderful. We have bacteria that kill bacteria. We have white cells that kill bacteria. We have white cells that kill viruses. They specifically attack viruses. We have white cells that specifically attack pathogens, allergens. So if you have a fungus, if you're breathing fungus, you'll have a select white cell that will increase, which is kind of cool. It is, I think, because that's your immune system. And if you don't have enough of those white cells, then potentially that problem will hurt you, will really harm you because your immune system isn't working properly. So how in the world did humans evolve with such a strong immune system? This is really kind of neat, well, but it doesn't work with everybody. Your immune system is indicated to other individuals what type of immune system you have through your pheromones. And so when somebody is attracted to the odor of you, it's because they're attracted to your immune system, as strange as that may seem. You know, they did studies in Philadelphia and Switzerland. What they discovered was that if a woman has a flaw in her immune system, and almost everybody has a flaw in their immune system, she will be attracted to a man who corrects the flaw in her immune system. And how does she know that? Because of the odor he puts off. I know. We don't even detect this stuff, but it's happening in our brains as far as the female is concerned, as far as the male is concerned. He's attracted to her because of her immune system. She's attracted to him because of his immune system. Now we know this happens with lower animals. They've done studies with moths, they've done studies with bovines, they've done studies with equines, and what they've discovered is creatures are attracted to other creatures' immune systems. So there may be an actual chemical reason for people to fall in love. It's just chemistry. It's your one immune system correcting another immune system. As logical as that is. And it is logical if you think about it, because we want to produce offspring that will survive. So how do you do that? Well, through their immune system. This is all very important. If you've ever been around somebody that has allergies and they can't go outside because of the allergies, potentially that has to do with their immune system. Now, if you have an individual that's sickly, that has to do with their immune system. So it's very logical for anything that's reproducing to reproduce with somebody that makes them stronger rather than makes them weaker. Okay, is all that logical? All right. So how do we know who to marry? Don't we get to select our own people? I don't know. Don't. So when you were attracted to a select individual, you were attracted to their smell. And despite the fact that you weren't acknowledging it as far as your brain is concerned, as far as your conscience is concerned, your consciousness is concerned, potentially that's the reason that all your children are such perfect little creatures, because you selected somebody who would be a perfect match, who corrected the flaws in your own immune system, and vice versa. Okay. Is that absolute? Of course not. Sometimes we had arranged marriages, which worked and didn't work. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work. If you read books about the past, a lot of women lost a lot of pregnancies. They married the rich guy in town. They lost a lot of pregnancies. Only one of their kids lived, and he was a weakling. And then some kid from the other side of the tracks where, these two people just happened to get together, and they made this fabulous baby that is so much stronger than everybody else. I mean, you can read all this stuff through history. It all depends on how you're interpreting everything. The 20th century and the dawn of a new era. Psychosomatic medicine is an outdated branch of medicine focused on the diagnosis and the treatment of physical diseases caused by faulty mental processes. In the old days, when I was working in medicine, especially in the 70s and 80s, we used to get a lot of these psychosomatic illnesses. People would come in and they'd say, "I've got a cold, and I'm dying. I've got a fever. I'm running a fever every night." And then you'd ask them, what was your temperature? And they'd say, "Well, 99, 99.3. Oh, it doesn't sound like you're very sick. No, I got this cold. I can barely breathe." As they're talking to you, and you can hear that they're not really congested, hardly at all. Anyway, a lot of psychosomatic illnesses in the past. We don't really believe in this kind of stuff anymore. People would convince themselves that they were sick. If you've ever watched Big Bang Theory, Sheldon is a hypochondriac. Of course, hypochondriasis does not exist anymore as far as the DSM-5 is concerned. But in the old days, of course, we used to diagnose people as hypochondriacs. Doctors, taking a more critical view of causes of diseases, started to trend toward the modern view of illness and health as multifactorial. So there can be a social aspect of it, there can be a mental aspect of it, a psychological aspect of it, there can be a physical aspect of it. The different factors show an interaction of host, the environment, behavior, and psychological factors. While psychosomatic medicine has ceased to be seen as a root cause of a problem, the discipline has allowed mind-body integration to be seen as one of the holistic focuses in health. But like I said before, MDs don't always agree with that. MDs are always going to try to find a physical reason for an illness. Otherwise, they don't have any patients. They love the psychosomatic guy coming in. They don't care. They'll still throw pills at him. And, well, yes, his insurance will pay them, and that's always good. I mean, if you're making money. So they'll treat everybody, and they'll treat them with whatever. And sometimes they treat them incorrectly. This is a problem this is one of the reasons, we talked about this last time, this is a problem with the painkillers. They're starting to over-prescribe painkillers. And this started in 2001. And it's continuing today. It's a really serious problem. The medical community started this epidemic. Unfortunately, with OxyContin, hydrocodone, I mean, they'll give you as much as you want. My wife got out of the hospital, they gave her 3 weeks worth of painkillers. She didn't need 3 weeks worth of painkillers. I had knee surgery. This was back in 2005. And they gave me 3 weeks worth of painkillers for knee surgery. I took painkillers one day, and that's it. And then I started playing softball again. But they gave me 3 weeks worth. So I sold the no. I didn't sell them, I swear. I flushed them down the toilet. And they didn't work, damn it. They didn't work. I took Tylenol, and that worked. But the hydrocodone didn't work.
Probably have the generic version.
No, this is a military hospital. I
So you had to buy it.
had the good stuff. Yeah, I had the good stuff.
Can you do your body just good?
My body doesn't.
Because I prescribe opiates, but my body doesn't help. So it's worthless to me.
Exactly. I'm the same way. Doesn't touch me. It doesn't put me to sleep. It doesn't make me forget things.
Doesn't help
work.
me.
Doesn't work at all. Exactly. So what are they going to do for us? The medical community is stuck on this is the only type of painkiller that they're prescribing. Toradol, I guess, is another one. Doesn't work on you either? It didn't work on me when I took it the last time. So what do we do?
Yoga.
Well, we don't
They
take.
actually prescribe, like, you should try yoga.
Does it work?
I'm just beginning, and it does help with the pain.
Okay.
It does, it doesn't alleviate it, but it minimizes it.
Okay. Well, anything that works.
Yes.
Any port in the storm. We just want the pain to go away, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what are we talking about? Psychological pain.
Yeah.
Well, psychosomatic medicine. Okay, no, I've already finished this slide. Okay, let me go to the next slide, see what's going on. While Europe continued to be enamored with Freud and psychoanalysis throughout the beginning of the 20th century, the psychologists in the United States were looking for something more interactive to use. Freudians, they sit there, they listen to your problems, and it can take years to fix somebody. But we want it to happen quick. We're Americans. We don't want to screw around with this stuff. So we developed behaviorism. Behaviorism has techniques that they use. Behavior modification techniques. And we can fix somebody in a matter of days. Maybe one day. Because we will use reward and punishment to train that person not to have a problem anymore. And that's what behaviorism is all about. It doesn't work with everything, but it can work with select things. Phobias, for example. It can work. Because we're Americans, we want to get people we want to put people back to work. Except for the shutdown things. Now we don't. Wait a minute, we've ordered them to go back to work, despite the fact they're not getting any money for it. They will. We'll make it up to them. The result was behaviorism, which has accelerated the treatment process and resulted in more definitive diagnoses. And for that reason, of course, Americans and Europeans are going in two different directions. They're staying with psychoanalysis. If you have a mental problem and it's diagnosed in Europe, you'll probably go see a neo-Freudian over there. But here in the United States, we use cognitive behavioral therapy, we use rational emotive therapy, we use behaviorism. We want to fix you as quick as we possibly can so you can get back to work. A lot of Europeans, of course, are a little bit different. Alcoholism is a really serious problem in Germany. The Germans drink their dinner. When they drink beer, they don't drink 12-ounce cans of beer. They don't even drink 20-ounce cans of beer. When they drink beer, they drink a liter. A liter is a quart, okay? It's a little bit more than a quart, actually. And all of their beer comes in liter containers, right? You've been there.
I can keep
It's one of the reasons, if you've ever been to Germany, it's why they're so fat. They've got, a lot of the guys have beer bellies, especially in their late 20s and early 30s. They start developing beer bellies because everybody goes to the gas house and everybody drinks beer. And when you drink beer, you don't just drink one, you have to drink two. How many beers did you have? You had a couple. Well, here, a couple might mean 2 cans of beer, which is 24 ounces. There, it's 2 liters of beer. It's common for these guys to go to lunch and have 2 glasses of beer. Well, a glass isn't this size. A glass is that size. It's a liter. That's not even a liter. That's still
This
too
is
small.
6 cups.
Is that a liter?
6 cups?
6 cups.
Is
It's a liter. There you go.
Three pints.
And they have 2 of them, okay? That's a lot of beer. In the United States, our beer is 3.2 beer, 3.2% beer. If you drink, what is that stuff? Busch, no, Budweiser's 3.2 beer. Coors, 3.2 beer. If you drink beer in Germany, it can be as much as 12%. Almost 4 times stronger than here in the United States. And they drink 2 of them, okay? That's a common lunch. They'll have a nice fatty lunch and they'll drink 2 liters of beer. So how functional are they going back to work? Well, they do this every day. So they build up a tolerance to it, so it doesn't bother them at all. But that's in Germany. Why was I talking about alcohol? I can't remember. There must be a reason. 1970s, Neil Miller was able to use operant conditioning techniques to teach animals and humans how to control their bodily functions. All you need to know is that it's happening, and you can control it. If your blood pressure starts getting high, then you can control your hypertension. You can do this through operant conditioning, using relaxation therapy or yoga. That's what yoga is all about. That's what meditation is all about. Some people swear by meditation. And Neil Miller is the one that came up with the idea. The 20th century and the dawn of the new era, behavioral medicine is the interdisciplinary field that integrates behavioral and biomedical science in promoting health and treating diseases. That's the way we do it in the United States. We don't want to mess around. We want everything to happen really, really fast. One of the interesting things about the French, if you ever go to a French hospital, which hopefully you'll never have a problem in France, but if you happen to go to a French hospital, they hire clowns to go around to all of the rooms to make people relax. If you spend 2 days in the United States in the hospital, in France they'll keep you in for 5 days. They have universal health care, and it's all paid for. It's all taken care of. Oh, I remember why I was talking about the Germans and drinking. Every 5 years you get a month off to go and dry out. That's one of the things they do. It's a law. It's a state law. And the federal government, their government actually pays for it. So you get a month off every 5 years to go. You get 2 months off a year anyway, but this is a free month you get, where the federal government, their federal government will pay for You're rehabbed, so you can dry out. Go to a spa and dry out. I know, it's cool stuff, huh? Cool beans, huh? Yeah, maybe. Anyway, but not in the United States. We do everything as fast as we possibly can because we're Americans and we want to get back to work. Okay, one of the methods that they use in bio and behavioral medicine is biofeedback. 1978, the APA established the Division of Health Psychology. It's Division 38 if you want to join the Health Psychology Division. There are 48 divisions now, I think. The last time I looked, there were 48. So in 1978, they developed the Division of Health Psychology, number 38. It lays down 4 goals for the new field: to study scientifically the causes or origins of specific diseases. That is what their etiology is, and we're looking at it from a psychological point of view. This is really important because when we talk about diabetes on the reservation, what's the cause? Why do so many people have diabetes? What is the etiology of the diabetes? Does anybody have an answer? What's the problem? Did he have an answer? He didn't, did he?
No, I came in like midway. It's like, is he asking like on the reservation?
Yeah, on the
Or just in
reservation.
general?
I'm sorry? Yeah, no, on the reservation.
Oh, on the reservation.
Yeah.
Lack of exercise
Lack of exercise?
or
Poor-
or diet.
Poor diet?
What I-
Okay. No exercise, poor diet. Wow, that covers just about everything.
Education.
I'm sorry?
Education.
Right,
Practice within the family.
right.
It's generational.
So what have you done on the reservation to combat diabetes? This is part of health psychology. What have you guys done in order to,
They opened up wellness centers.
they opened up wellness centers?
Just
Yeah,
to
they
move
start programs.
Yeah.
Exactly.
healthier options at the schools like cafeteria.
There you go. Instead of having pop machines, now they have juice machines, I guess.
Milk.
I don't know what they have. Water, everybody's supposed to drink water.
When you
Nutrition classes for patients.
Nutrition classes?
and then when you're pre-diabetes, like borderline, when you go to the clinic and they test you, they sit you up with a nutritionist
There you go.
for education.
So you're trying to do something. You're trying to combat diabetes. And this all has to do with health psychology. If health psychology didn't exist, none of this stuff would be there. Because doctors treat diseases. They don't treat pre-diseases. They don't play that game. It's health psychology to force doctors to even think about this stuff. They only treat gunshot wounds. They don't treat the people before they shoot somebody. They don't try to talk them out of shooting somebody. They want them to shoot the person so that they'll have a patient. I know that sounds horrible, doesn't it? Diabetics, but health psychology tries to cure the diabetes. The doctor tries to treats the diabetes. So it was health psychology that did this. So it tries to take care of the psychological, behavioral, and social origins of the disease. So is there a social origin to this disease? Is there an environmental reason for this disease? Well, evidently there is, because you've tried to change things. You've tried to educate people. You changed the pop machines and the candy machines in the schools. You've taken them out. So evidently you're treating the social aspect of it. If you're hungry, eat a candy bar. Nah, it doesn't make any sense. Wait a minute, there's an advertisement. If you start acting like Betty Davis or I can't remember. I love those Snicker commercials. You got Betty White playing football. Eat a Snickers. It'll take care of your problem. Of course, those advertisements shouldn't be on television on the reservation because they teach you to eat candy. They teach you to do that. Dr. Pepper used to say you need to drink Dr. Pepper 3 times during the day, 10, 2, and 4. You needed Dr. Pepper at 10 o'clock in the morning, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and at 4 o'clock in the afternoon for energy. That was their advertisement. Look at an old Pepsi bottle. It'll have 10, 2, and 4 around a circle. Dr. Pepper in the middle. You're supposed to drink it 3 times during the day. They investigate why people engage in health compromising behaviors. We can talk about alcohol, we can talk about cigarettes. As far as diabetes is concerned, do cigarettes, do they affect diabetes? Does that have anything to do with diabetes? Smoking cigarettes? You're not taking anything into your body. It's not turning into sugar in your stomach.
It's raising your blood pressure.
It raises your blood pressure. It's a vasoconstrictor, so yeah, it can affect diabetes. How about alcohol? Are alcoholics sometimes become diabetics?
Isn't the alcohol from the sugar?
Sugar in your stomach. If it can't break down into sugar, then it's not food. Everything breaks it down into sugar, including alcohol. So, yeah, it's the first thing it breaks down into. To promote health, health psychologists consider ways to get people to engage in health-enhancing behaviors such as exercising regularly and eating nutritious foods. So we try to promote health, and of course that has been done with diabetes on the reservation. To prevent and treat illnesses, if they do occur, we try to prevent them. But if they do occur, of course, we propose that you treat yourself. Health psychologists design programs to help people stop smoking, to lose weight, to manage stress, and to minimize other risk factors for poor health. They also assist those who are already ill in their efforts to adjust their body, their illness, or to comply with difficult treatment regimens. And of course, when we talk about difficult treatment regimens, if somebody comes down with cancer, it's very debilitating. Mainly because they treat them in a lot of different ways. They treat them with radiation, which is relatively intrusive. They treat them with chemotherapy. And depression is part of all this. Not only that, but when they treat them with the chemicals that they treat them, a lot of the chemicals cause a psychological reaction, a negative psychological reaction. So Division III Health Psychology, of course, attacks these ideas of treating a disease, preventing a disease and then treating the disease. To promote health, promote public health policy and improvement of the healthcare system. Health psychologists are very active in all facets of health education and consult frequently with government leaders who formulate public policy in an effort to improve the delivery of health care to all people. One of the things that happened with the last couple elections, the question of the Affordable Care Act came up. And there's a lot of people that really hate the Affordable Care Act. I mean, they really don't like it. They think it's horrible. Now, you guys don't have to worry about any of this stuff because you guys have IHS. So you've got your free health care. You've got, well, whatever.
It has its
Yeah,
limitations.
it may be
though.
crappy. I mean, it may be shitty, just as bad as the military. But military medicine's not very good. They tried to kill me several times. And they failed. Anyway, even after I ruptured my spleen, you know the reason it took 28 hours to have my operation after I ruptured my spleen? They were painting the operating theater at the base, so I couldn't get an operation. So when I went in, they diagnosed me. They couldn't diagnose me with a ruptured spleen, because if they did, they'd have to take me to surgery. But they couldn't take me to surgery because they didn't have an operating theater. So they kept diagnosing me with something else. This is how smart doctors are. Finally, somebody said, look, you've got a ruptured spleen, and you haven't died yet. So we're going to send you downtown. And of course, they had to pay for it. The military had to pay for it. That's the reason they didn't operate. Well, you've had horrible experiences with military people as well, the medical community. Yeah. And see, I used to work for those guys. Anyway, okay, so the Affordable Care Act, there are a lot of people that don't like the Affordable Care Act. But one of the things that the Affordable Care Act did, I don't know how you feel about everybody else in the United States, but it gave health insurance to 18 million people that didn't have it before. They were kind of in between. They weren't making enough money. If you're poor enough, then you get Medicaid. But these were people that were in between having their own health insurance and being on Medicaid. So it increased the number of people that had health insurance in the United States. But there were a lot of people that were really pissed off about it. Conservative people that had to, they were afraid that they had to spend some extra money. Money is so important. The most important thing in the United States is money. If we're if we're trying to figure out why a policy was passed or why a policy was taken away, it has to do with money, every damn time. Some people are just greedy. They want to make more money. So if they had done away with the Affordable Care Act, that means, so where are these people going to get their health care? Well, they're going to have to buy it. And if they buy it, who are they going to have to buy it from? They're going to have to buy it from insurance companies. So somebody was going to make money off of that. Damn it. And we were in the military. You guys get all your health care for free. You think maybe everybody in the United States should have the same health care you guys have? Even shitty as it may happen to be. Does that make sense? Everybody should have IHS? Do you not want other Indians get free health care, so nobody else should have free health care in the United States? Is that the way you feel? You want something that nobody else has? That's awful nice. Well, there's a lot of people that don't think that that should happen. There are countries where they have universal health care. Canada, for example. Oh, yeah. The Netherlands, England. So if you get sick in Germany, just go to the hospital. Go to the emergency room. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to show them a special card. Look, I'm a German. You have to prove who you are. They just take you in and fix you. And they let you stay in the hospital as long as you want. But we don't have universal health care in the United States because people need to make money. So that's one of the reasons why. I get free health care. I'm so old. How old are you? I'm so old that I'm on Medicare. But before that, I was on TRICARE. TRICARE is military medical insurance. So now I've got HMA, which is the Navajo, whatever, health insurance. It's crappy. This is terrible. They only pay like once a year. So it's horrible. So my dentist is screaming. It's been 9 months and this bill is still outstanding and your insurance hasn't paid, but they say they're going to pay it, but they haven't paid it yet. And I told them, look, it all has to do with IHS. HMA is on the IHS healthcare schedule or payment schedule. So when IHS gets paid, we get paid, then we pay you. That's the way it works. Oh, jeez, it was horrible. How am I doing on time? Is it time? What time? 50. It's 34. 20th century trends that shaped health psychology, increased life expectancy, recognize the need to take better care of ourselves to promote vitality through a longer life. One of the things that happened is that we discovered what cholesterol was. All these people were dying of a heart attack. We were losing military people. We were losing young military people from heart attacks. We had guys jumping in jet airplanes, taking off and crashing because they had a heart attack. And of course, like I said last time, the military didn't care that man was dead. What they cared about was that he crashed the airplane that was worth $1 million or whatever. So the military decided that they were going to do research looking at cholesterol, trying to figure out why these people had heart attacks. And the thing that they discovered, of course, was atherosclerosis. They had clogged arteries. That's why they had a heart attack. Then they tried to discover what that clog was, and they discovered that it was cholesterol. So they started doing work with cholesterol. And this started way back in the 50s. Well, when I came along in the 1970s, we were still doing research looking at cholesterol. At that point, cholesterol was one number. It was fats, lipids. We referred to it as lipids. And we got one number. And then all of a sudden we could fractionate it. We could split it into triglycerides and cholesterols. And this happened when I was in the service, and I was working in the laboratory. So suddenly we could look at somebody's blood, and we could tell how many triglycerides they had in their blood and how much cholesterol they had in their blood. And as it turns out, triglycerides are what you ate yesterday. Cholesterol is the average amount of fat that you eat in a given day. Now this was back in the 1970s. People were eating bacon and eggs for breakfast. The bacon was not lean bacon, the bacon was fatty bacon. And they were cooking with animal fat. So there was a lot of clogs in a lot of people's hearts. And we were looking at all of these pilots, the healthiest people in the United States. These are people that run every day. These are people that lift weights. These are people that are arrogant people that didn't have anything to do with it. But these were individuals that flew airplanes. And these were the guys that were dying of heart attacks when they pulled the G's. So we discovered we're the ones that fractionated the lipids. And now, of course, we have HDL, we have LDL, we have triglycerides. We can break it up into a lot of different pieces, and we can tell what's the good stuff and what's the bad stuff. For the longest time, we thought all cholesterol was bad. But now we know that there is some good cholesterol in there. The HDL cholesterol is good. The LDL cholesterol, which is actually a smaller molecule, is bad. The HDL cholesterol is good because it sweeps out the LDL. So the more HDL you have, the better, the less cholesterol you're going to have in your system. And this is how we increase life expectancy. We looked at all this stuff. We looked at this stuff and we said, look, you need to stop eating so much bacon. At first we said you need to stop eating eggs, but that wasn't really true because eggs have so much protein in it. It was the bacon that was the bad stuff. And so we changed the way people eat. You need to eat more fruits and vegetables. You need to eat more roughage so it cleans out your system. And so our life expectancy increased. The rise of lifestyle disorders, for example, cancer, stroke, and heart disease, we educated people to avoid the behaviors that contribute to these diseases, the high-fat diets, the smoking and the eating. We realized that tobacco was negative, was not a good thing. For the longest time, the tobacco companies paid researchers to tell people that tobacco was good, or not to tell people that tobacco was bad. And this went on until the 1970s. It's one of the reasons why the tobacco companies are under suit right now. And they have to pay billions and billions of dollars because they lied to us. They lied to us. And lying is a bad thing.
So is it.
Well, maybe it's a bad thing. Maybe it's presidential. I don't know. All of it. Rising healthcare costs focuses efforts on ways to prevent disease and maintain good health to avoid these costs. And that's the direction we have taken this, into wellness. We're trying to make people well. We want you to exercise. We want you to do things that are good for you. To eat nutritious foods, to exercise, to relax, instead of be under a lot of stress. So we're trying to prevent diseases as far as that goes. Rethinking the biomedical model, develop a more comprehensive model of health and disease, the biopsychosocial approach, and that's the name to your textbook, I think, if anybody's got a textbook. The biopsychosocial aspect of health psychology. This is a picture of a lady looking at herself in the mirror and a guy looking at himself in the mirror. The biopsychosocial perspective recognizes the biological, psychological, and sociocultural forces act together to determine an individual's health and vulnerability to disease. Health and disease must be explained in multiple contexts. You can't just say, he got sick because of this bacteria. He got sick. Sometimes you can be around everybody that's got the flu and you don't catch the flu. What's the difference between you and them? The bacteria is there. The doctor would tell you, you should be sick. What's wrong with you? You should be sick. Why aren't you sick when everybody else is sick? People survived the bubonic plague even though they had the same fleas that everybody else did. Why did they survive? When the Europeans first came over here, the indigenous population was very susceptible to all these crazy diseases that the Europeans brought over here because of the turkeys, because of the pigs. You're very susceptible to these, but not all indigenous people die. Why did some people not die? I know. How many people actually did die? This is very controversial. How many people were here before Europeans got here? This is a huge argument. Because in the old days, the Europeans want to argue that there was hardly anybody here. So they took over an area where there weren't very many people. That makes them feel better. But there may have been as many as 100 million people. Indigenous peoples in the Americas. In South America, Central America, and North America. There seem to have been people everywhere. There seem to have been. But as many as 99% of them died from the diseases. And when different tribes that were inland, I guess, well, you guys came in contact with the Spanish, but the people up in Montana, they didn't come in contact with white people until the 18th century, maybe the 19th century. And then they started dying of smallpox. The tribe, I used to teach at Fort Belknap, it's the home of the Gros Ventre and the Assiniboine. The Gros Ventre lost 90% of all their lodges. They started out with 600 lodges, they ended up with 60. So many people died, they didn't know where to bury them. They bury people, they used to put them up in trees. They ran out of space. So many people died all at one time. They were sticking people in rocks, in fissures in rocks. So many people have died all at one time. You know. So the reality may be that 99% of your population died with the encroachment of European Americans. Ask Marius that. I think that's in Zen, by the way. If anybody took a class from Marius, he usually teaches out of Zen. One of the textbooks. Yeah. Zen has an alternative approach to history. He doesn't just talk about the propaganda of history, he tries to talk about the reality of history. Anyway, okay, health and disease, there are multiple contexts. So what is one of the reasons, I mean, the bacteria was there and you couldn't fight it off, but the reality is some people survived. Why did those people survive? Were those the people that had already come in contact with Europeans? One of the interesting things about this population is that you've got so many people, so many more than everybody else. And you've always had a large tribe. Why didn't you guys die off like everybody else died off?
Took care of themselves, they ate right, they ran.
So did everybody else. I mean, they did, there was no sugar to eat, so they didn't, everybody was eating buffalo, venison, turkey. I mean, this is all good stuff. They were growing their own vegetables, some of them did. Anyway. Some of them had problem with corn. Some people ate so much corn, that was their staple. You can't just eat corn. Corn is like 23% sugar. So their teeth fell out and they got all sick and they couldn't survive. They needed protein as well. So that was select populations. That's what happened to the Mayans down in South America. That's one of the reasons why the city-states just broke up, because so much of their population was gone. Okay, so why did some people survive and almost everybody else die?
They had stronger immune system.
I'm sorry?
They had stronger immune system.
There was something about their immune system. Potentially you're right. There was something about their immune system. Maybe they had more killer cells. Maybe they had a different structure in their immune system. That's probably has one of the aspects of why they survived. But one of the other aspects has to do with how spread out you were. This population has always been a spread out population. Other populations, if you look at the buffalo hunters, they all lived in a camp around each other. And so when one of them got sick, they all got sick. And you guys, I understand that. Sarah's sick over in Crown Point. You're going, well, it's going to take 3 days to get there. So you don't go. It takes too long to get to Crown Point. So the aspect, the fact that you guys were so spread out may have saved your population, as interesting as that is. All behaviors as well as health and illness occur in a biological context. Health psychology draws attention to those aspects of our bodies that influence health and disease, our genetic makeup, our nervous system, our immune system, and our endocrine system. Of course, when we talk about endocrine system, we're talking about diabetes. That is, and we're also talking about stress. How do you react to stress? Are you a type A personality or type B personality? If you're a type A personality, then you react very negatively to stress. You get all excited. If you're type B personality, you don't care. Now the difference between a type A and a type B is a type A is going to be a very successful person because they push. They're pushers. If you're type B, you'll probably be a bum, but at least you'll be alive. I like the alive part. So I have a wife who's a type A. I can't tell you how much money I make. I have no clue. I don't know how much money I make. But my wife knows to the penny how much money I make. So I let her worry about it. She's going to die young, but she's already 67, so that's not bad. But I'll live forever because I don't care. Don't tell my wife I said that. And your immune system. How strong is your immune system? We talked about this last time. How often do you get sick? If you don't get sick very often, probably you have a fairly strong immune system. Some of us do, and we like to brag about it, don't we? I know you brag about it to me. So I think that's really kind of cool, that some of us have a stronger immune system than others. Are we gifted? Yeah, we're gifted. Thank you. And our genes, maybe it has to do with our genes. My dad, if he cut his arm, 3 days, and it's all healed up. I know, he healed that fast. It was amazing. I have the same gift. I had surgery, I had a tumor on my forehead. I had a tumor, oh my God. I had a tumor on my forehead and they cut it out. And it was, he did it on Tuesday, and by Thursday you couldn't see it, it was gone. I had healed up that quickly. I know, who does that? Well, it's in my genes. I'm lucky. I never get sick and I heal really fast. So, immune system, type B personality, gonna live forever. I'm like an alien. Now don't ask Travis because he'll tell you he knows I'm an alien. But the reality is I'm human just like the rest of you. I'm not any different than anybody else. Why don't we stop right here? We'll pick it up next time. We'll talk about some of the negative things you can do to yourself, the fun things that you can do to yourself. I'll see you guys on Wednesday of next week. Don't come here on Monday or